My kids and what they do in life and how they perform is not a reflection of my success. I want them to just be like they're them.
Oh my gosh, you guys, that is Natalie Plummer, and you are going to love this conversation with her.
Yeah, Ken, she gave us some great gems of parenting wisdom that, quite frankly, hadn't occurred to me. And so I had a lot of takeaways, and I know you will too.
Super fun. Welcome to the very first ever edition of the West Ada School District podcast. We need to introduce ourselves. I'm Ken Hyde. This is Katie Rodenbaugh. Katie, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of give your background. Yeah.
Hey, everyone. I'm Katie Rodenbaugh. I'm a West Ada parent. I have 3 kids in the district. We will have a 4th grader, an 8th grader at Galileo STEM Academy this coming year, and a sophomore at Eagle High. And man, time flies by. We've been in West Ada since day one. My husband received all his education in West Ada. I've worked in state level education for a long time. I've worked with just about every district in the state, and I can tell you that we are so blessed to be here in West Ada.
Well, and what is your specific role?
Oh, yeah, I guess I do work here too.
Yeah.
Thanks again. Yeah, I'm the community liaison. So I have the pleasure of getting to build relationships with parents, community members, business owners, and just really so that we can bring lots of resources to our kids here in the district.
Super cool to do this with you. And my name is Ken Hyde. My kind of background is broadcast journalism. I've been with the school district for almost 2 years now. I love it. I love the job. Basically, I'm kind of our visual storyteller. All the stuff that you see on the YouTube channel is kind of what I do.
And you're really good at it, I have to say.
No, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I love being here and doing this podcast. This is a very new thing for us. Excited about that. But again, to your point, I think one of the biggest things is I'm a parent of 2 kids. My son just graduated from Mountain View High School. My daughter is going to be a junior there. Every day, you guys, from kindergarten through 12th grade, they have been in West Ada schools. So not only do we work for the school district, but we really are. We're parents too. And that's kind of why we're doing this podcast. The why really is we want to give our parents and our kids tools to navigate this whole educational thing we're doing, right?
Exactly, Ken. And we're not trying to replace parenting or anything. We're just parents who happen to work at the district. And we know that this day and age, we are all kind of overwhelmed by information. It's information overload. And I think, we serve on the communications team. So part of our job is to make sure we're getting the information out there, that it's timely, that it's relevant, that it's helpful. And this is just another way that we can bring pertinent parenting topics, education topics right to you, so that you can listen while you're, running errands or walking the dog, driving to work.
So we really do hope this is a great tool for you all. And I'm super excited. Our very first guest ever. You heard Natalie a minute ago. Natalie Plummer is her name. She is best known for her website, Hello Meridian. She does some great stuff there.
Yeah,
Katie.
She's an amazing local media influencer personality. Most of us know her from Hello Meridian. She's a writer. She and her husband, Shane, host the Boise Bubble, which is a great local podcast. So it really is exciting to have Natalie on as our first guest. And she's also a West Ada parent with 3 kids spanning multiple ages.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I was really excited to have her on the very first podcast, because she has an elementary school kid, she's got a middle schooler, and she's got a high schooler. I wrote down. So her daughter goes to Ponderosa, 5th grader there.
Yep.
Son at Sawtooth, he's going to be an 8th grader. And her oldest daughter is at the Rebound School of Opportunity. So not only is she someone who kind of has her finger on the pulse of Meridian, but the fact that she has 3 kids and 3 different levels at West Ada is super exciting.
Yeah. And she really started her career as a mommy blogger when her kids were tiny. And so she does bring quite a wealth of information that we think will be beneficial to you.
So there you go. Enjoy this conversation with Natalie Plummer.
Well, we're here with Natalie Plummer from Hello Meridian, and this is really super exciting because it's our first episode ever of the West Ada podcast. So welcome, Natalie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited you guys are doing this podcast. Just as a parent, I'm excited to hear this.
Well, we're always looking for more ways to stay connected with our parents and families, and just another way to get information out there. We're all super busy, and I know when I'm cooking dinner or walking the dog or driving to work, I can pop in a 20, 30-minute podcast and get caught up on things. So
good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, so tell us, I mean, Hello Meridian. I mean, you've been doing it for 7 or 8 years now, I think.
I have.
How did it come about? How did that whole genesis come about for you?
Sure. So I was one of the first mommy bloggers. I've been working in social media for 16 years now. So I did 9 years of mommy blogging and monetizing that and working more national. And then had my last baby and kind of took a break just because I was just overwhelmed in life. And having babies is hard.
It is hard.
You know, I'm like...
Kids are hard, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, no, they're like a whole other level. But then I was kind of like going a little crazy. So I started a social media management company. And nobody was really doing anything like that. I mean, Instagram was really kind of coming up as this new way for businesses to get their word out, but Idaho was a little bit behind. So on my own, I just started a company. I was running 12 pages myself, like all the copy, all the content.
That's not hard.
Yeah, just like, and from home. And I was like, what can I do to really push more traffic to these businesses? So I started a local page that would talk about cool things. I didn't have my face on it. No one knew who ran it for the first 2 years.
I remember that because I was in media, back then too. And I remember trying to figure out like, who is running this? What is Hello Meridian? Is it a group of people? Is it? And then a few years later, you started kind of coming out.
Yeah.
Not coming out, but coming out in front of the camera.
Like, I can show my face. And then what we didn't know at that time was that when you have a face behind a page like that, it totally changes the game, and engagement when it was better. And then I just started making it more of an influencer page, which basically just means there's a voice and a personality and opinions, which that's a little scary. So then it just became its own thing. And then we started the Boise Bubble podcast a little over 2 years ago.
And you do that with your husband,
yes.
Shane. And now are you full-time business partners together? Does he have work outside of?
So he is a director at Petra Construction. So he's in organizational development, and he does that. And then we do the podcast as well.
Okay. So you mentioned you kind of started all of that. Well, this really kicked off after your last child was born. So you have 3 kids.
I have 3 children.
You're a West Ada parent. Why don't you tell us about your family a little bit? And
sure.
Being in West Ada.
Awesome. So yes, we've been here. We've lived in Meridian for 13 years, and we moved here from Chattanooga, Tennessee. So a little bit of a change, but so I have a 17-year-old, and she was at Owyhee for a little bit. We've actually changed to another West Ada school called Rebound.
Rebound School,
which is
awesome.
It's amazing. We can go into that a little bit. It's interesting how your children are not carbon copies of you. Shocking.
Weird.
Right?
Probably a good thing.
I know.
For me, I'm not going to lie. Yeah.
And my husband and I were we really, we loved the big school, like being very involved. And then our oldest, it wasn't the best fit. And so we found this other option where she didn't have to be quite as social. So she's been doing that and like thriving. And then we have a 14-year-old boy. He's at Sawtooth. They just competed in nationals for National History Day. So I got to go with the Sawtooth group to Washington, D.C. and be there for a week and watch them. It was the coolest thing, just the coolest
awesome.
kid.
Yeah.
It was the coolest kids. It was the GT program that made it. And then my youngest is going to be, oh my gosh, I can't believe this, 5th grade. Wow. At Ponderosa. So I have all the levels.
Well, I'm in the same boat. I think your kids are just like a year ahead. So I'll have a sophomore at Eagle and then an 8th grader and a 4th grader at Galileo.
Yeah.
I have all boys, so it's kind of chaotic in my house.
Yeah, I bet.
But I love that you bring up for your oldest, we sometimes think as parents that our kids are going to be just like us or each kid's going to be the same. And that's honestly, as a parent, I've only been with West Ada for a few months, but as a parent, that's one of my favorite things is that we have school choice. And so you can find the right fit for your kids most of the time. And it's okay. To transfer and change and find that fit that really speaks to their soul and helps them achieve. I'm so happy for your daughter. And so she's going to be a senior, right?
Yes. So all of my kids are at the last of their schools, and which is just, it's weird. Like, it just doesn't seem that long ago that we were just starting kindergarten for my first, and I'm like, she's going to be a senior. So, it's been.
When you
cool.
mentioned running social media for different companies for like 16 years, I'm pretty sure I didn't even have social media 16 years ago. I maybe had MySpace.
I had MySpace too. And if that was with blogging, I mean, blogging really came about like 2006, and then 2007 I started. I was a stay-at-home mom, and that was a great experience, and I also was completely losing my everything.
Totally get it.
And so it was just like this way to connect, and kind of that. At that time, I talked about parenting. That was what I wrote about, was mothering and parenting, and like, what is this?
Right.
And
nobody prepares you, really.
No. And I'm like, is this okay? Am I supposed to be like feeling this way?
Sure.
So.
Well, and I love that you do have all three levels. Is that kind of, and you're running a business, and you're working with your husband. I mean, all these things. Is it kind of frenetic? How do you keep all of that? Squared away?
Well, I don't like the word balance, because that is unreasonable.
Sure. Yeah.
I think it's just priorities.
Sure.
And I really wanted my children to see that I prioritize my dreams. I just saw a lot of examples where I felt like moms were told, once we became this one aspect of being a woman, which was a mother, that was who we were. And I'm like, well, that's a great part of me, but that's not the only part. And I'm not raising these daughters just to become mothers. So
100%, sure.
When I think about it that way, and I want them to see this example of like a well-rounded person, it makes it easier, I think, mentally. Maybe not emotionally. Sometimes I'm like, what are we doing? But we have our marriage is very focused on, we share ownership of the mental load. I like to use that word.
We use that word too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's, and that, especially with kids in so many different schools, the to-do lists of dealing with paperwork and like teachers and all that, keeping money in their accounts. I realized that I think there's a lot of assumptions that mom would do it. And I'm like, what?
Oh,
why?
yeah.
Why is mom doing it? That makes no sense.
Right.
Have you been in my house? Have you been listening to our
Oh,
conversations?
yeah. So, and when we realized that, and we learned more about ownership of things instead of just, hey, could you help me? And when the kids realized ownership, that, for them as well, they're not helping me with home things because they live there too.
Right.
So that changed a lot of the working, so that I just felt a little more stable and being able to do it.
Well, and if you're happy and living out your passion too, that translates into all aspects of life. And so your family can see mom's being fulfilled and happy here, and she's a happier mom at home, and she's a happier wife, and happier person all in general. And so
makes life better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so talking about balancing the mental load, we're getting ready to go back to school. School starts August 16th.
I can't believe it's right around the corner. Wow.
I know. We had to take one. This summer is our short summer, but we will be out, Memorial Day next year. So we don't go in after. So
okay, cool.
We'll catch up next
summer.
Things
are shifting in West Ada.
Yeah, the schedule's shifting. But that's all the things. And that mental load you talk about in our house, I had to consciously add my husband onto his email, onto all the things too, so that he's aware of what's going on with our kids and their sports and the signups. Back to school. How are you? Are you starting to get ready for back to school? Are you trying to do that transition? Or are you hanging on a little bit longer?
I feel like you have to start. Otherwise, I get just way too stressed at the end. I just get panicked. And so if I start things early, then I know that it's going to be a much smoother transition. So yeah, there's the purchasing all of the things, and it's been fun to kind of introduce my husband to some of the things he just hadn't done. I was like, so this is the list, and he's like, so can I just do it all on Amazon? I'm like, you can. They're gonna want to go pick out their own stuff. He's like, I don't care about that.
Right. You get a red backpack, you get a blue one, you get a black one.
And a lot of what we're doing at this point is really just getting our kids back into a routine, because summer is just very fluid. And that we've learned from very bad experience that if we aren't transitioning into a more more settled schedule a couple weeks before school gets in, then we're in trouble.
Yep. You pay the price.
So that's where we're really at, is more of, okay, let's look at what sleeping needs to look like. I know that it's bright at 11 o'clock. I know it's so annoying. And
Go to sleep.
Yeah. So that's, I think, a lot of the preparation.
Well, and it's funny that you talk about it. So as a guy, my brother-in-law lives here in town as well, and one of his traditions he started a few years ago was he would take his kids back to school shopping. And I don't want to be sexist or weird, but it's hard for guys. It's not my wheelhouse. But I kind of wonder how is your husband dealing with that? Is that a good tradition to kind of help them get involved with the whole process?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what it looks like. So one of the things, like, you can let go of certain things. Like, it's just easier to go online to get their school products.
Sure.
And so then we'll go and get this more special ones, like at Target, like your special binders, the ones that are really going to show.
Right.
So that they feel like, and my older ones don't care as much, but my younger one is still, it's weird when you have the younger ones because you want to keep raising them like the younger version, but then you kind of
We like pull them up with
you
shoulders.
treat them like, wait, are you watching Stranger Things? You're 10. I don't think you should be watching Stranger Things, but like you have to keep on. Maybe I shouldn't have outed that I did that.
I always say parenting almost feels like diminishing returns. Like our oldest only watched PBS cartoons, and then the other day I walked in and my 9-year-old's watching something like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? We're okay with we do
Yeah.
this
What
now?
happened to Barney? Where'd
I
Barney
know
go?
it's very odd, but I think the most important things for my kids is the clothing, because we do want them to feel like they're. This is just in our experience. We want them to feel like they're very comfortable and themselves at school.
Sure.
So we don't always have the biggest budget for for clothing, but so we talk to them. When you're at school, what's going to make you feel most like you? And what's going to, so that you feel powerful when you're like walking down the halls? Because I remember just, I didn't have that same opportunity especially middle school. I got my own job just to have clothes, and it was a big deal that you kind of have, it's almost armor.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's,
Yeah.
and so that's like kind of one of our priorities is think about what you will feel the strongest and most confident wearing at school. And then let's find those things so that they are like going in like dressed, in their power suit. Cause that we do that as adults.
Right.
Heck yeah.
And I love the prioritization that you have on that, because we don't have a huge budget, and you're buying for multiple kids usually for back to school. And in my mind, my mom would take us to Mervyn's, and you got like 4 pairs of shorts that you could match with 6 tops.
Yep.
And mix and match, and it was all but it was never your personality or what made you. It was just what we could afford. And so prioritizing a few pieces, right? Is that kind of what you're saying? A few pieces that will really make you feel you. That's a great tip.
And we even go, like, I know vintage is very in. It's weird. My kids look like I did in the 90s.
Right.
And they're so mad that I got rid of my clothes. I'm like, well, it's been a long time. But so we'll even spend the time going to vintage shopping and finding like just the right thing. And I think it just makes them feel more comfortable with like some of the anxieties that they're feeling going back to school. Like we can't be there with them.
Oh, sure.
But we can help them just feel a little more secure knowing like they're going to have food that they like and that's going to keep them fueled, and they're going to have all their supplies, and just that's all we can do. So
I'm kind of wondering about back to school traditions. And one of the things that my wife did back in the day was, from day one, she started taking those first day of school pictures by the door. And I was like, okay, we're going to do this. But you know what? My son just graduated from Mountain View, and he's heading off to college.
Oh, wow.
And so we did the graduation party thing this summer. And to see all of those pictures lined up along the table, I was like, oh my gosh. But I was like, well, you know what? At the time, I wasn't really into this tradition, but now I'm like, that is a cool thing that we did.
Yeah.
What about you? Any back to school traditions?
that's a very father thing to say, by the way.
Yeah.
Many things that I'm telling my husband, like you'll appreciate it. And now, like
100%.
with Christmas cards, when he lines it up, he's like, oh man, I love that we do this. I'm really think about that next time we have our family photo, because
right. Your attitude needs to adjust on that.
We do the photos. Usually the first day of school, Like we usually have just like a really fun grab breakfast, like just muffins and fruit and something. And I usually make a letterboard or just something like that. But just to kind of, there's something about the beginnings and the ends of things that they just remember. And so just that start, I think, somehow making it intentional so they feel like that kind of calmness. Like if mom's calm, then they're calm. If mom's not calm, they're not calm.
Oh, hey,
and
100%.
Absolutely.
Not that I always live that, because if they ever listen to this, like, okay. But at least that first week, like, I try to slow down a little bit with work too, just because I don't know what's going on. And with 3 different schools, it's easier for me to get to the schools than with my husband. But so we take the photos. We take a photo, like all 3 of them together, so we can kind of see like how much their, their
Right.
height differences.
When did you get taller than me?
I know. So,
Overnight.
and then that night usually we'll have a really nice dinner. And then we all, because there's something, so old school and awesome about sitting around the table and talking about our day.
Yeah.
And I really want our kids to have relationships with each other, that they're interested in what the other's doing. So we'll often talk about like, what happened today, and, what friends were you, with, so that we're all just aware. So it's just that day is almost like this weird little mini holiday, just so that we're all touching base, I think.
Well, traditions are so important, and I love that you're bringing up the dinner table, but I think we'll take a break real quick
Sure.
and then come back to that, because that's a topic I really want to get
Okay,
into.
cool. Sounds great.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Go to YouTube, search West Ada School District, and like and subscribe today.
And we're back with Natalie, getting into really the meat of parenting and back to school and things like that. And before the break, we'd started talking about family dinner, particularly the first night of school, having that dinner together, sit around the table. But I like what you were starting to say about your kids having relationships with each other and being interested in each other. Do you want to highlight a little bit more on that?
Sure. One thing I think you realize as you get older is that as much as your friends are important in, high school or college, it all comes down to your siblings and those relationships. Those are the ones that really stay. And so we wanted to try to facilitate as much as possible these relationships and the interest in each other, and just asking questions in a place where they all feel comfortable sharing. It doesn't always work. I mean, my kids are all 4 years apart, and so that's quite a big divide.
Sure.
My oldest is really great about showing interest, but sometimes we just have to lead that of like, oh wait, she hasn't had all the time to share, because our youngest is talking in a different way than the rest of us are a little older. So family dinners, it's not as often as we'd like it to be, but we make it really intentional. Like we're sitting down, we're setting the table, and then we do try to really focus on each other so that we're just aware of where everyone's at, and including the parents. We want our kids to know where we're at, what we're doing in our careers, so that they realize that we're not just there to serve them or drive them. Like we are part of our family.
Love that. Yeah.
We just did a Last Night on Earth thing. We just did a podcast about it where we just had this idea: what if we spent a night together thinking that the world was going to end the next day, and how would we spend it?
How fun. I saw your posts on this. But
It was the sorry. What was it?
And just I saw that as well. And just by the way, congratulations, Boise Bible Podcast receiving an award. You got to be pretty pumped about
yes,
that.
Best of Boise.
That's so
cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That we were
That's
really
a big
excited.
achievement.
Thank you.
But Last Night on Earth, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just
Oh
wanted to,
yeah. So it was a really beautiful night. So how would you spend your night if you knew there was no tomorrow? It was really interesting because we kept on like wanting to talk about things we need to get done.
Right.
But if there's no next night, you have to stay very, very centered and focused.
In the moment.
But
Be where your feet are, right?
yeah. So it gave the kids the opportunity to kind of say some things to each other, and we didn't push that. And our youngest she had a really wonderful night. She didn't say as much because that's just not her style. But watching all of my kids especially the 2 oldest, just talking about what their family meant to them, and like it was awesome.
That's
I'm
cool.
like,
That's
okay,
cool.
just sometimes just facilitating the conversations that you're not pushing them. There's no expectations. It's just you're inviting to share if you want, and if you don't want to, you're just enjoy each other's presence, and that's beautiful too.
Well, and I tell you, and I'm not going to get emotional, but my daughter's going to be a junior. My son's heading off to college, and to your point, we don't every night sit down at the dinner table, but we try. It's intentional, and to see the relationship that they've built over their time together is pretty cool, and it's going to be a little difficult. So I know that's not a question, but I love the idea of really being intentional and what you're doing there.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
I was just going to say along the sibling line and having them take interest in each other, we try to do the same thing, but have like a mutual respect kind of thing. Like the whole family goes to one of the kids' games, and then maybe the teenager is like, well, I don't need to go to his game. And we're like, no, we all support you.
Yeah.
We're all going to do this together because it is so important. Friends do come and go.
Yeah.
But family is really, truly forever. And so you're going to want your siblings in that bond, especially as they get older and they have to like start taking care of us as parents, right? So you want your kids to be well bonded and interested in each other.
Yeah.
Well, and kind of shifting gears a little bit. I mean, first day of school, it's looming. It's coming up. And it's exciting. It's fun, and it is exciting. But the other side of the coin is there is anxiety. There is like, oh my gosh, what are my teachers going to be like? What's this? How do you deal? And you've got all different levels. How do you deal with that anxiousness?
So with anxiety and anxiousness, I think it's a little different for this generation than it was for us. And I think that's incredibly important for us to understand. We are not raising the same versions that we were. And just, I don't want to I don't want to like deep dive into that, but I do work in social media, and I am very interested in statistics on social media. But I mean, you have to think about, as humanity, it was like village conversations for thousands and thousands of years. And then we move into print. So we're a little bit more bonded. And then we have TV, and we're like, wow, we're really connected. And I had 17 magazine, and I was comparing myself to like models. And then in the last 15 years, humanity has plunged into this global consciousness of social media and internet. And I don't think we have any idea how that is affecting our children, even if they're not on social media, which I will lay down the gauntlet. They shouldn't be on.
I'm with you. We were the last ones when my kids were young. We were the last. Everybody in the class has a phone, Dad. I'm like, sorry,
and
we're
that's
not going there yet. And it's hard, but it's
the hard thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. And my kids have like locked down phones. Even my almost 18-year-old, like these are not phones that have access to social media. And the reason I say that is
so interesting that given what you do, that's
I know.
really interesting.
Yeah,
it's because you've seen behind the curtain, if you will.
Like the anxiety. So when we talk about anxiety, there's nerves that we had,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
But there is a different level of anxiety that this generation is dealing with, even if they're not on social media. They had so much instability with COVID, and they're connected to everything in the world all at once. I don't think we really understand what that's doing to their brains. So I think sometimes we can kind of diminish their anxiety a little bit, like, oh, you'll be fine, or just like, be strong. I think we need to deal with them a little differently, and realize that we are not really aware of what's happening in their brains. And so for that anxiety, what I have decided is that I just need to be the safest place for them.
That's good.
That I see them, that I hear them, that I don't diminish that anxiety, and try to give them the tools that I can. Not just, you'll be fine, which sometimes I want to do that because I'm running all over. But to actually hear and understand, I literally have no idea what they're going through because they were born into a world that I wasn't. I was raised in analog. And, we were just riding our bikes around and like, our moms didn't know where we were. And then now it's like, hey, so there's, they're still hearing, even these little kids, they know there's an earthquake here, and they know that there's all these people fighting. And then they're also seeing that tension at home of like parents who are talking about this, talk with each other, and you might not know your kids are listening.
But they are.
They are. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the first thing, is just to realize we're winging it, this generation of parents, and to try to make them feel safe, especially at home, that no matter what happens at school or whatever, home is a safe place for you.
100%. Yeah.
And that's what they always say, like your kids, we get compliments on our kids all the time when they're out in public, teachers, coaches, other parents. And then I'm like, I always clarify, like, I'm Blake, Will, and Jack's mom. Like, or is that, are you talking about the right kid?
Yeah.
But that is
Have
something
you
to
met
be.
my kids?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something
Right.
to be said for home as the safe space. And I love that you are calling us out to realize that we don't know all the answers. Because sometimes as parents, we just think, we're a because I said so generation,
Yeah.
right? Like
Oh,
if you
yes,
asked your
we are.
parents something because I said so, we
Right.
would never say that to our kids because we know better. But you want to sometimes, and humbling yourself to realize we don't know everything.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot from you right now, actually. So thank you.
cool.
I'm thinking
It's cool.
about being softer and kinder and listening more to my boys when they tell me that they're anxious about something or they're
Yeah.
talking about something I have no idea. Like I don't know about that snap someone sent or
Well, you guys,
you
it's
know?
so weird too, though. Like I had no idea. So I'm talking to my kids, and I don't even know how to express this, but it's more socially acceptable to snap someone rather than to text someone. And I'm like,
100%.
holy moly, I don't even get my brain around that. I mean, can you talk to that? I mean, what are some of the tools we can use to help make home a safe space for our kids?
So again, I've been working on social media for a long time,
Sure.
and statistically, if you're looking at the research, kids should not be on social media. They shouldn't. The damage it causes, especially for teenage girls, is unbelievable. That being said, they're still probably texting, even if they're not on social media. This entire generation has learned a different way of communicating and
Right.
connecting, and it hasn't. And again, it's brand new, so we haven't revised it. Like they are the guinea pigs. I think
Which is
that-
scary, but you're right.
Yeah, and we're
yeah.
the guinea pig parents.
Yep.
There's no our boomer parents cannot give us advice for anything.
There's
'Cause
no
it's-
precedence,
They're
yeah.
I mean they're like, why don't you have a pension? Like they can't help me.
right.
Because it's like
Those don't
they're,
exist
just go buy a
anymore,
house. I'm like, the house that's $750,000.
Yeah.
So and we're that same to this generation. We're just that boomer equivalent. So I think first acknowledging that you really are not aware, even me who does this professionally,
Sure.
is that I can come and have a conversation with you guys because I have
Sure.
the tools to do it. And this entire generation is starting to lose those tools. And the thought of actually having to look at somebody and have a conversation is something we're not teaching.
Or even to pick up the phone and have a phone call. A phone
No.
call is
Oh,
that's,
no,
like,
like-
that's not even a thing for my
like,
kids.
I don't know if have they no.
I
they
never
don't.
hear my kids talking to their friends.
No,
on
they
the phone.
they're like,
yeah.
I mean, they just now have phones, and we had like the child phone, so they can text, and only the people we allow.
Yeah.
But they're still texting because we
Sure.
don't want them to be totally oblivious. But I'm watching the anxiety that they feel of when they actually have to see someone. Because it is so easy to speak behind a screen. It's so
yeah.
so easy.
Sure.
You can be anything you want to be. You can be confident. And so for that, I don't really have the answers because I think we are, again, this guinea pig state, but making sure that they have dialogues with us, with our families. And sometimes we do have to push them. Like we are very, like you go ask for that thing
Yes.
at the restaurant and you need to make that phone call.
But that's awkward.
Yeah, and
No,
I'm like,
no,
yeah. And that's the stuff I'm like, yeah, I know. It
Yeah,
Suck
sucks.
it up,
life.
Buttercup.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
do this. Yeah.
So
yeah.
there's some things you just have to push through. But I think we just don't know when it's so simple. I mean, I'm that same way. Like I have an entire persona on social media, and the thing people say when they meet me is, number one, you're much taller than
Sorry.
you look. No. And after 15 minutes, you're nothing like I expected.
Sure.
And I know that because that's a more curated version of me that I feel comfortable sharing, and I'm okay with that duality because I go into it intentionally. But kids are like, oh my gosh, I'm so confident online, or I'm just like, hey, like this is my great selfie, and then you have to actually see them in their vulnerable place. It's I think I don't have the answers except that to make them feel safe in this place of disarray almost. If
It
that
is.
makes sense.
Well, I'm hopeful that maybe, like you said, we're guinea pig parents with a guinea pig generation, but maybe we're starting to see, I think we're seeing some early evidence or anecdotal evidence of what it's doing to our kids. And maybe it's not too late to kind of right the ship or do things that we know that are basic skills that can help them. We always have our sons when they meet somebody new, they shake their hand, they look them in the eye. When you're talking to someone, you
100%,
look at my eye.
absolutely.
We say that
Yeah.
often to them. Look at my eyes when you're talking to me,
Yeah.
just so you can. They need to learn how to interact face to face.
Yeah.
And so part of being back in school after COVID and all that is I'm so grateful that our kids can go to school and be around other people, because I mean, maybe they do walk around with their faces in their phones on campus, but for the most part, I think they're still getting some interaction and having to talk to people. So I'm hopeful.
Well, and I love it, and one of the things I love, I mean, to your point, none of us are experts. We're parents. We're we do what we do. One of the cool things about West Ada is we've got 4,500 employees, and the fact that we've got a crisis response team and we've got counselors and social workers. Anyway, it's just cool that the experts do exist, and we'll talk with some of those folks, I think, later on as well.
Bring
But-
them on later podcasts
Yeah,
to
and,
really
and
dive in.
accessing that is really important. Like our
Huge,
kids, we have a
huge.
therapist for our daughter because as parents, we want to believe that we're enough, but again, we're guinea pigs, and like it sucks that we had to be the parents of thousands of years, that we got to be the ones that move people in from from analog to digital.
Right.
It will never
Right.
happen again. It's us.
Right.
And I had to realize, okay, I don't have all the skills, and I need to access help.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about skills and helping your kids with other resources and things, do you have some, just because you've spanned the high school, middle, elementary, do you have some tips or ideas on how to help them navigate things at school? I know something I had never thought of, and until Ken mentioned it, I thought it was just me because I was clueless, or my son. We had a freshman last year. I didn't know, like, oh crap, is it not cool to bring your lunch to school? Is everybody supposed to
Right.
have lunch money? Are you supposed to leave campus? I didn't realize everybody didn't just eat in the cafeteria. Do you eat in the quad? Like, how do you
Yeah.
navigate some of those things?
So we're not there with them. We do as much as we can, like to tour the schools to make sure that they feel comfortable with what's their surroundings. But we also want them to feel comfortable. So if they don't want to eat in the cafeteria, because I know that my oldest did not feel comfortable doing that, and I wanted her to want to learn,
Sure.
is to give them a lot of options. Like, I would like them to just take their lunch all the time. That would be better, and it's cheaper.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
At the same time,
Economically smarter.
yeah.
Dad loves that. Yeah.
Yes. At the same time, there was something that was a little more empowering for them to buy their lunch. And so we talk about that. I like them to feel like they have a lot of choices of how their experience is going to be. But we're pretty hands off with like teacher relationships and that kind of thing. We want them to be in charge of their own schooling. That's just me in general. Like,
Sure.
if there's
Own it.
if there's a situation, like they'll come to us. We'll talk to them about how they could handle this. There's been a couple of things that we had to get involved with, but like it's so sparing. Personally, I think that as we're talking about this guinea pig situation, teachers right now, oh my word, they are in a place where it's
yeah.
all new. It's a completely different world. And so for me to be a parent and think that I can just like have all these opinions on how you should be teaching, I'm like, I have no idea what is going on in
Right.
reality.
Right.
So unless something is like, whoa, and that hasn't happened, then I want to give teachers grace to have these relationships with my
Sure.
children. So I'm pretty hands off. I get the emails, I try to like participate when needed, but I want my kids to feel like the relationship is with them and their teachers, them and their school. And I'm there as a help if they want me there.
Right.
But I don't insert myself because that's just not the way I parent.
Yep.
So that's just me personally.
I know. I
100%.
love that's 100% how we are in our house. I don't even. We honestly, I don't know if I should be saying this on a West Ada podcast, but like once my kids are in middle school, like we don't even go to like the conferences unless they're needed. Like I'm not going to go around the gym to just shake hands and be like, "Hi, I'm Will's mom." Like,
No, why? He would be humiliated.
yeah, if there's a problem,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
but kids need to have ownership. Like I think we're seeing adults who were products of like super helicopter generation. And there's no way in heck I'm going to be emailing the high school teacher about my son's assignment, right? Like he needs to be responsible for that, or like the football coach, or you're hamstringing your kids if you're doing those kinds of things.
And then I watch it. We kind of check it. Like we'll get grades back, and we'll be like, hey, we just got this email. But what I usually do is I forward it to my oldest. Take care of this. Because I want to respect her and her process, but also sometimes you have to fail. Failing sucks. Failing's harder than success, for sure.
But you learn much
and
more.
If I want them to go off and live, like I sure don't want to be in charge of that. And I don't want them calling me every day and I don't know how to deal with this relationship at work. And for just that's how my relationship is. I'll meet the teacher and I'm like, if you need me, you get in touch with me. But you're the teacher here,
Well, I love that. Let's take a quick break. Okay. But I want to come back. I really want to drill down a little bit more about respect and what that, because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll dig into respect in just a moment.
Cool.
Follow West Ada School District across your preferred social media channels: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Nextdoor, and YouTube. You can find us there today.
And we're back with Natalie talking about parenting and kids going back to school, respect, building relationships with teachers. I really appreciate your approach on parenting and enabling your kids to be the masters of their own ship, at school, or take ownership of their education, and not really, helicoptering around them with their teacher relationships. Will you talk about that a little bit, like teacher relationships? I know you talk to a lot of people in the community, and undoubtedly they're teachers, and so you probably have some good insight on that.
Well, we have been interviewing some teachers for a future podcast. It's been very interesting, because I think. So during COVID, when things were kind of crazy, I allowed teachers to write in their experiences, and I was really shocked. And so one thing that I think, we talk about how kids are kind of losing tools for communications. I think that as parents in a high level of stress of being this in-between parenting, that many people are losing some tools of a basic respect level in their own homes. So, for example, I guarantee that there's no one on this planet who loved both of the last presidents, right? No one did.
Really?
Yeah, shocking.
What? This just in.
And that's the case for us too. Of the two presidents, one of them, we didn't love. So, however, when we were around our children and we were talking about the leaders of our country or the leaders of our state, we still spoke respectfully. We would say, we don't really agree with this very much, but we made sure not to other people. That, we don't want to other anyone. We don't want to other groups, even groups that we really highly disagree with. We showed that we speak about humanity respectfully. So that when they were moving on and as they are, that they are seeing the world as, all of us together, and we're not seeing enemies. And so what I've noticed, for dealing with teachers is that respect level at the home is often not present.
Oh, yeah.
So when we're talking about teachers, even if we're not in agreement with everything that they're doing, when we're talking with our kids, we make sure we're continuing to talk at a level of respect so that they understand they are to respect their teachers. They are to respect them. They are not to speak to them like they would their peers. Now, you can be friendly with your teachers. You can have fun relationships with your teachers. But if a child is disrespecting their teacher quite a bit, my assumption is that they're hearing some disrespect in other places, and that's I'm not always going to blame a parent. You don't know where they're hearing that kind of disrespect, and it could be on social media, and that's another reason social media is not a place of respect. And if kids live there, even if they have very respectful parents, sometimes they will learn this disrespect. So one of the things we want them to understand is if there's a real issue with like teachers or something that's going on, please bring it to us and we will listen and let's talk and let's figure out something we can do. That hasn't happened. We have had discussions with them where we'll talk through things, and that might just be their teaching style, and that's the teaching style that you're going to need to deal with,
Sure.
just like we all did. So we don't discount their experiences, but the respect of a teacher is incredibly important because that's going to move on to so many positions. Yes, stand out for yourself, and at the same time, understand what respectful relationships look like.
Right. And you can teach them those tools exactly like you're doing by modeling at home, modeling it with your partner. How do you speak about people who think differently than you, or how do you treat them? Respect. We all deserve respect and some grace maybe.
Yes.
Something I talk to our kids about too, they get frustrated if I turned that assignment in and it's not showing up in Power School. And I'm like, well, your teacher's a human and maybe you turned it in late. That's not their priority to go back because you turned in late work and get it uploaded to Power School right away, right?
Yeah.
Like that's your problem, not theirs. And they're human. They're working with hundreds of kids sometimes, especially at the middle and elementary level. It's easy for an assignment to get lost. They're human. They have a hard day. They get flustered. They're working with tweens and teens, and so having those important conversations. But like you said, knowing when the big stuff is the big stuff. Like come talk to us about these types of things and we'll help you navigate and give you the tools.
And parents have lost that skill though. I mean, I'll hear parents talking about exactly like Power School. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, so it's 3 days late. Like, calm down.
Yeah.
Like
we didn't even have
Take a breath.
I know.
we had quarter and semester report cards. That's it. That's
Yeah.
when our parents found out about our grades, not real time.
So when the parents are so stressed out, oh my gosh, we haven't seen this, I want to be take a beat. This is the point of this is to learn to love learning, to learn respect, to learn tools for communication. It's cool if we get some math in there. Yeah, I'm hoping that all happens. But the broader picture is that we're raising humans. And so I don't understand the parenting thoughts of, I need to know this, this, and this. I need to know exactly. I'm like, dude, the teachers are working hard. And then they also need to go home and they need to stop thinking about your kids.
Right.
They need to stop working.
100%.
Or they're
Child
not,
of a teacher here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
if we don't continue to respect them as teachers and then them as people and them that they need their own time, we're going to lose our teachers. We already are.
We already are, yeah.
So if you want to keep your teachers, you need to have some boundaries of letting them do their job.
And they're very well trained. I mean,
100%.
Teachers are
100%,
well
yeah.
trained. There's a whole pedagogy, art and science of teaching. There's a whole way of teaching kids that sometimes I think that COVID brought about that we all can be homeschoolers. And I think that's great. I would love to be able to be a homeschool mom. I'm not. I'm not disciplined. I wouldn't get anything done. I'd be like, we're going to the park today.
Yeah.
We're going to Roaring Springs every day.
Ice
Yay.
cream.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
hard teaching. I mean, it's hard work. Volunteer, get out there and see the great work our teachers are doing in the classroom.
Well, and one of the things I'd like to drill down too, you said stand up for yourself. One of the conversations we've had, and this more so with coaches than teachers, but coaches are teachers as well in West Ada. My kids have played under some great coaches, but they'll have a problem, and I'm like, no, listen. I'm not going to talk about this. You need to learn to go advocate for yourself. Any tips or tricks on how to tell parents, hey, we need to teach our kids how to advocate for themselves. I'm not going to fight your battles. How do you approach that?
Well, I think a lot is some self awareness of, are you allowing your children to be themselves, or are they some kind of indication of your success?
Right.
So what are the real lessons that we want them to learn in sports? We do want them to be good in sports, but if they sit the bench the whole time, that's a great lesson. And my kids and what they do in life and how they perform is not a reflection of my success. I want them to just be like they're them. And so
100%, but that's hard.
It is
It
hard.
can be
And that's
hard
another
sometimes,
level.
yeah.
And if you're like,
Yeah.
if you're thinking, I need my kid to be so good at this, and I'm going to yell at that coach because I want him in, then
Right.
I would take that back and say, who is this really about? Is this about
Right.
you? Is this about them? And what lesson are you teaching them? My parents were awesome with that. They had their, their own stuff, but like, you guys are your own humans. Yeah. So I would say like every one of those steps is teaching them a lesson that you might not be aware of it. And if you're trying to like push your will over on a coach, then you're showing your kids that, hey, we need to be, the respect level for sure.
Sure.
But I think we're just teaching them the wrong lesson.
Right.
And sometimes we have to be able to be fluid. And I would just say kind of kick it back a little bit and then get some relationship and look at that coach and say, that is not just a coach. That is a person.
An educator. All of it.
We try to make people into these little teeny small bubbles because it makes it easier for us. And when we realize, hey, you know what, they're doing this, probably not being paid a catastrophic amount, I'm going to guess, and they're dealing with some really hard things, and then give yourself 2 minutes before you respond, and like think about what is the lesson that I'm teaching, what is the message I'm giving my children about my relationship with them, and then after 2 minutes, if you still feel like you need to go talk to the coach, maybe. But taking that beat and making it an intentional action instead of so reactive is going to teach your children so many tools that they're going to need.
Yeah, taking a step back. We live in an instant world. We want things now. We want it right now.
Yeah.
And taking a step back to breathe and think and reflect before you jump into something, I think that's huge. We could all use that lesson.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're just kind of making a lot of narcissists, honestly.
Right?
Yeah. If you ever do any
100%.
statistics on how narcissists are created, look into that parenting style, and you might get some good tips.
You might see some
I
correlations
saw some
there.
things that I was like, I need to reverse real fast.
Right. Well, shifting gears again, one of the things that, listen, I'm a dad. I'm cringy. It happens to
You
me
are,
all
Ken,
the
you're
time. my daughter's going to be a junior. And how do you get involved? Not even at the high school level, but how can, listen, teenagers are different. How can we get involved without being, and I'm okay being cringy. It's okay. Sometimes that's my role. But how do we communicate well with our kids and be involved without being overly cringy? Maybe, I don't know.
I guess it would mean what does cringy mean? Cringy to our kids, cringy to the teachers.
Right.
And
To the kids.
and
I
they're
think
saying
it's from the
they're
kids'
saying cringy to the
perspective.
kids.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, we want our children's education to be for them to own it. So I ask them like, "Hey, are you okay with me like coming to this thing?" I actually say, "Hey, do you care if I come dressed in like my work clothes, or do you want me to like be in a hoodie like the rest of the moms?" Like, I know that sounds weird, but it's like I'm going into their domain.
Sure.
School is their domain. I am the visitor. I am
their
not
world.
the leader
Yeah.
there. So I want the kids to lead. So if there's something, I have had my youngest say, I'd rather you not go because I just don't really want my parent at this field trip. I kind of wanted to go on the field trip.
Right.
But like they were going to the penitentiary. I'm like, that's so fun.
check it out.
It'll be fun.
So with that, I'm like, do you want me to go? And do you want me to just be kind of quiet, or do you want me to, what do you want me to do? So that they're in charge of, their own stuff. Because I want them to be in charge moving on. Like,
Right.
I don't want them to keep calling me, hey, Mom, how do I register for college? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we just assume that they're going to leave the house and have these tools. Why do we assume that?
Right. We have to teach them.
Yeah. So in the cringy in that level, I'm still cringy. I mean, I'm
can't help it.
I'm
It's
their
just who we
mom. I gave my son, he won an art award, and I gave him a hug afterwards in front of his friends, and he was like, I can't believe you did that. And I was like, okay, well, I'm still your mom.
Yeah.
But
I have the right to do that.
Yeah, I listen to them.
You will be hugged.
I know. So I don't mind that
Yes.
kind of stuff,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
do.
I love
ask
that
them.
you're so thoughtful. You really are. Like, that's going to be my biggest takeaway, is to kind of take a step back and be thoughtful and ask them what they want out of things. I do often ask, is it okay if I don't go to this thing? Like, do you want me there? Like, what's your,
Yeah. Well, you think about how many adults don't really know who they are, what they want. They've been told their whole life, this is the plan. Right. And then all of a sudden they have this midlife crisis because they've just followed this plan for them. And so if I think I want my kids to fit in this mold, they're going to break it in some way. And it's either going to be because they take their own direction, or it's going to be volatile because they're like, this was never me. And so giving them the tools to figure out what is them, what's not them. And sometimes it's very uncomfortable. Sometimes that's an uncomfortable experience. Our kids are, my husband and I look at each other and we're like, what even are these kids?
right?
But it is so not from us, and that's what we see as the success. Like, they know who they are already. They're already learning that, when so many of us had to do some weird stuff in college to figure that out. Or, at 40 something and you're like, who am I?
Right.
The best tool I can give them is for them to, when they walk out this door, they're not some version of me or what I wanted them to be. They feel so confident who they are.
That's cool.
I've heard it said that you're not raising kids, you're raising adults. Mm-hmm. So I like that. And we often tell them, like, God gave you to us to, like, raise you to be good people.
Yeah.
Not,
Yeah.
So.
I actually, you have those moments with your kids where they say something that's like you needed to hear, and usually it's later. But I was talking to my son, he's just his own person. He's artistic, and I said someone invited him to throw a ball, and he couldn't, and because he never wanted to do that.
That's not his thing.
Right.
And I said, honestly, I had to go write it down afterwards. But he said, I was like, I'm so sorry. I never really taught you to throw a ball. And he said, you taught me to be nice to people. And I was like, I did.
Way better.
So much better. And they are.
Better.
Our kids are nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I'm like,
cool.
oh, okay. I'm failing at a lot of things, but my kids are nice.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I think that's a great place to end. Why don't we all just go out there and encourage our kids to be nice?
Yeah.
Teach
Love
them to
it.
be nice.
Love
That would be great.
Thank you so much for this conversation,
Yes,
Natalie.
this was so fun.
It's really been cool to have you on our first podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited for the podcast.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Wow, Ken, what a great conversation with Natalie. Thank you so much for being here and listening.
It was so much fun to do this first podcast, and I'm really excited about where we're going to go. But we need your help, you guys. If you wouldn't mind, please, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, tell us what you would love to hear. And that's one of the things too, you guys, really, we're building this podcast. We would love to hear from you, and you can, and I'll put in the show notes, but send us an email at communicate@westada.org. Again, that's communicate@westada.org. We would love to hear from you. What subjects, what tools would be really good? What conversations would be good for you all to hear?
What timely topics do you need to know about as parenting? And we cover, we want to cover all parents. So, from pre-K through 12th grade, what is it that you want to know about? What's, pulling at your heartstrings? What are you struggling with?
All of it.
And we have so many resources here at the district. We have experts at all different levels and in different areas. So we'd love to bring them on too to answer those questions.
So shoot us that email, subscribe and review. Also, you can learn more about the podcast at westada.org. /podcast. That's where all of the podcasts will be stored, all that kind of thing. So go there. If you want to look at the visual version that we'll have on our YouTube channel, you can go there and check out the visuals. I'm not sure people want to see me, but they can if they want to. But anyway, that'll be on our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, well, and we'll just make sure we continue to communicate openly with you. We have our next guest on our second episode of the podcast.
So excited about
this. Really
this.
exciting.
Yeah.
It's Detective Shannon Garza. She is the school resource officer, SRO, at Lake Hazel Middle School, and she is just truly a well-informed, super well-educated wealth of knowledge for parenting.
She's amazing, you guys. I tell you, I had the chance last year to watch her and kind of walk around the school with her, and the way that she communicates with middle schoolers, she's really amazing. And so the information you're going to get from her about how we can communicate at the dinner table or throughout the day, she's just a wealth of information. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, she gives us great tips for really opening up those lines of communication and how to be active listeners with our kids, and just all kinds of great tips to really get through during those kind of tougher tween teen years.
So anyway, thanks again, you guys. Thank you for being here, the very first episode of the West Ada School District podcast. For Natalie Plummer, again, thank you to her. She was amazing, and we will see you next time.